buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah, live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. It is hour one of the big radio show for this Thursday. Oof, man. The week just cruising on by. Tomorrow is Firearms Friday, your chance to sound off on issues of a 2A nature. We're pretty excited about that. As always, looking forward to that and getting ready to go. But today is Thursday, and we are continuing on our voyage, our voyage of discovery. I don't know. It's candidate discovery this morning. We're getting ready to do our thing and head out there into the great unknown with all these candidates and people who some of us have never heard of. You know, some of us have got, we've got no feel for what's happening. So I thought it would be good to sit down and talk with a lot of these folks. Now, some names are familiar. In hour two of today's program, we're going to be in hour two of today's program, we're going to be talking with Mia Costello, former state senator, who's now running for state house as a representative. But in hour one, we're supposed to be talking with Elexie Moore, who is running for state house in the valley here for the seat that's currently being held by Jesse Sumner. So that's a new name for me anyway. I wasn't familiar with Elexie. So we're going to see if we can pick that up and start talking about that and just kind of find out what's important. This is an important time of year for us because we're here, we're less than, doing the math here, 25 days away from the primary on August the 20th. August the 20th is the primary. Now, that doesn't matter for most of the seats that are out there because the vast majority of seats only have, two or three candidates in them, maybe up to four candidates. But other than that, the only reason that a primary would matter is if they have more than four candidates, because with ranked choice voting, of course, the top four candidates go through to the general election. And there's only two seats in the whole state that have more than four candidates right now, with the exception of of course, of the U.S. House race, where where there's a lot of candidates, but Nick Begich and Mary Peltola and Nancy Dahlstrom are obviously the front runners on that stage right there. And of course, we've already interviewed John Wayne Howe, and we've interviewed Nick Begich. We've put invites out to a bunch of other folks and have never heard back from any of those folks. On Monday, we're working on having Ben Carpenter on board as well for the full show. and some other ones. So this is going to be an interesting show. Let's just put it that way. Well, interesting time period, I guess. The show, how interesting is the show? I don't know. That's up to you to decide. All right. Well, I can see that we are ready to go. Elexie Moore is over in the green room hanging out, ready to get down to it here and start talking about candidate and election and campaign stuff. Don't forget, you can always join us on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Michael Duke Show, or on YouTube or on Twitch. It's kind of we're everywhere. Let's jump over right now and get squared away so that we can chat with Elexie Moore. And she's with us right now. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
I can, in fact, hear
good.
you.
Yay. I was having all the difficult things this morning, trying to
having all the technical difficulties. That's
yes.
Welcome to my life. That's the way. All right. Well, let's get started then, Elexie. I was just saying, that in these races there seems to be, there's names there's names you don't know, there's new faces, there's new names, and I think maybe a lot of folks don't know too much about you. They don't know who you are or where you come from or what the whole deal is here. So first and foremost, let's start off with some background about who Elexie Moore is and what your history is and how you got to where we are today. Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes sense, just kind of putting my name out there and with no real political background other than helping candidates and their runs, grassroots campaigns. I grew up next door to Scott Ogan, so we're kind of immersed in it growing up and have a real deep love for politics and government and deep respect. But again, for those of you just joining, my name's Elexie Moore. I'm running for House Representative for District 28. Currently, my opponents are Jessica Wright, Steve Menard, and Jesse Sumner. I was born here and raised in Alaska. Most of my life, I've lived out here in the Valley. I was mostly raised up on Lazy Mountain. My grandparents are, let me turn this off. My grandparents are farmers up there. So just wonderful people, pioneering spirits. They love Alaska, love just this whole state. And so a lot of that was just ingrained into me, I think. And this is where I've raised my kids. I have 6 children and I'm married to a wonderful man. He works up on the North Slope. And I think I jumped into this race. It was twofold. It was presented to me as an option, something that, was kind of like, hey, what do you think about this? Is this something where your heart's at right now? And I think having, being a mom, full-time mom and full-time real estate agent as well here in the community, I was a little bit like, oh gosh, am I ready for that? Is that something that I want to do? It's definitely something that I've thought about, dreamed about, but wasn't quite sure the right moment that I would be stepping into something like this. And, the door opened and I decided to, with the conversations with family and support and all of that. And I took the plunge and here we are. I think I'm doing this for my kids, for the future of the state. I want to see that they have the same access and the same freedoms and the same opportunities that I had as a kid growing up and I have now. And it's bleak looking. We look like we're on a decline here on the state. And it's one of those things where kind of like the mama bear. I want to get in there and be a part of the decisions, be a part of the conversations, make something happen. And do I have all of the knowledge and know all the things? Absolutely not. But am I determined and have the integrity to go in there, figure it out, and stand by my promises? Absolutely.
So, I mean, was there this race has got, this is one of the more crowded races in the state, with the 4 different people in it. And so was there a single thing that kind of pushed you over the edge? I mean, when you saw everybody else in there, was it what, or was it accumulation of I'm frustrated and I don't think we're going the right direction? Or was there a single issue that made you just go, oh, now I got to do it kind of thing? What was your thought process during that time?
Yeah, I think over the last, especially since COVID and just immersing my children in different sectors of school, we do brick and mortar, we do homeschool. We have my older ones are at the career and technical school, and I think education is probably a big deal, the biggest issue for me jumping in and being a part of all of this, and just with what I'm trying to say is, sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought. I cannot figure out how to turn my messages off on my finger, and they're dinging.
Don't worry about it.
I'm sorry. Can you hear that?
Just a little bit. It's not.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I can't figure out how to silence it.
Don't sweat it. It's nobody. Nobody else.
Okay, sorry. Oh, anyhow, so education is probably my biggest thing. Having kids in different sectors and just seeing how broken that system is and how there's just no transparency, there's no accountability, and I am a advocate for universal school choice, parental rights within that. I think that the money should be following the child, and I think that there needs to be there just needs to be better systems in place to see
so education was
in those, and have the option for each child to be going into. This isn't a one system fits all. Children are so vast and different in the way that they learn and educate, and I think that should be up to the parent to decide where their kid is best succeeding and where they flourish, so that they can have a prosperous life later.
So education was a real big driver for you, especially coming out of COVID.
Absolutely.
To get involved. And as you said, you'd helped out with some other campaigns, but you've never held other public offices, right? So you've never...
No. I've been a real estate agent out here in the Valley for about a decade now. So just buying and selling real estate, helping the community in that area.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's kind of a good, get a little background and kind of feel for where people are and to know exactly when they lost their mind and decided to jump into this thing with both feet, because this is a whole different kettle of fish here. This is a whole different level of madness to try and jump into the race. Elexie Moore is our guest. She's a candidate for State House in District 28 out in the Valley. And we're going to continue with her here in just a moment, but we are bumping up against the break. And so we'll go just a little bit early since we don't have enough time to ask a full question before we get into this. So please stick around. Again, don't forget, you can check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, all the different places out there. We'll continue with more of the Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. I muted you for a second there because it was like a ding, 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 ding.
I can't figure out how to turn it off. I'm like, maybe we need to jump off this and just do the phone.
No, it's fine.
I'm so sorry. I'm like,
you got a lot of people trying to get a hold of you, though. I mean,
I think it's because I haven't opened my computer and my stuff is synced, and I'm like, how do I unsync it?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And so it's just like a catch up of messages. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. It's not. It's just funny because all I was thinking was, man, I'd never get any sleep if my phone. If I can't, no sleeping in for you. Ding, ding,
I'm just
ding,
like, is this real? Of course, I would go on a TV show and this phone, I would not know what I'm doing here. So
it's all good.
Sorry, I'm so nervous, and I'm like, oh, now my phone's dinging, and I can't even keep track of my thoughts here.
Like I said earlier in our conversation, just think about this like we're just having a conversation over a cup of coffee. This is not
Yeah,
a big deal.
absolutely.
People in the chat room are like, don't worry about it. It doesn't even bother us. So it's not a big deal. It's bothering you more than it's bothering anybody else. So let it go. Let it go. Let it go.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, I mean, I mean, it sounds like let's say, so you're a full-time realtor, your husband's on the slope, you're also homeschooling, you're doing all this stuff. Man, I mean, you decided to jump into this at the same time. I mean, that just seems like, I mean, what's your husband have to say over something like this? I'm sure he's full supportive, but
Yeah.
woof, man,
That was probably that was like the, okay, are we gonna go for this or not? And I was like, okay, I'll ask Luke. Luke will be the, I'm up for the challenge. I can multitask, I can do the things. I know this is something I'm passionate about. I throw my whole self into it, and just determined to make a difference and be a part of the action here, and where there has been a lot of inaction. And so when I presented him with with this opportunity and the conversation that I've had with some people, he was like, do it. That's exactly what you should be doing. That is your heart. That's where you're at. That's what, I've heard you talk about for years. And, make the run. Let's go. We'll pivot. We have all the family support. We know what we can and can't do. And he was good with it. And so I should mention, I have older children too. My daughter's going into her senior year, and my son's going into his sophomore year. So some high schoolers down to my little 6 and 7 year olds. So, it's a lot. We're busy, but it's a good, well-oiled machine. And so looking forward to how it pans out.
Got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
We homeschooled all 5 of our kids, and it was a blessing. It's one of those things where it's a blessing, and at the same time you're like, get out of the house, go do something else. We need to get
right.
So it's always a mixed bag there. But
yeah, and it's it just works for some of my kids where the brick and mortar didn't meet their needs, didn't meet their education style, how they learned and what they needed to be successful with reading and math and science and history. And so where homeschool, we can kind of curate a little bit better to what works for them. So
that's the best thing about homeschooling, is that each child has such a different learning style.
Yeah.
Even 2 kids who were born, right next to each other, it's like they could have completely different learning styles. And so you have to, make it fit for each one of those kids. And that's the benefit of being able to have that freedom to homeschool or do those kind of things, is that you get that information. So, and I was able to do it. So, all right. Well, we're coming up on it here. You're going to hear the ding. That means we're 30 seconds out from rejoining the radio. And so we're going to do that, and we're going to get started.
Okay.
Right there. And so now we're ready to go, and we're going to jump back into it. Elexie Moore is our guest, candidate, House District 28. And we're ready to do it. No pressure. It's just going to be fun. We're going to have a good time. And see, that's the first. It's going to catch up. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Awesome.
All right, here we go. 5 seconds out. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Please like and share, like and follow, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube-y things. Let's do this thing. Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
I am not. I'm perfect angel. No pain in the anything. I am just great. Joining me today is Elexie Moore. She's a candidate for House District 28 out in the Valley. She is a registered Republican on that ticket. It's actually a 4-way Republican race, which is interesting. And so I guess we'll start off there. I mean, again, a crowded field. All 4. This is a little bit of that Republican on Republican violence that we've been talking about here. I mean, it's political, again. But what sets you apart from your opponents? Starting with well, I mean, mainly for the Jesse Sumner, the incumbent. What sets you apart from your opponents that should give people a reason to vote for you, I guess, is what it
Yeah.
says.
I think that I don't know a whole lot about Jessica Wright or Steve Menard, to be honest, but Jesse is someone, obviously we all know he holds the current seat now. And I think as we're both strong opponents, strong people, grounded in what we know and what we're doing, and our community spotlight here. But I think we differ in some of our issues and some of the things that how I would have voted, or what my stance is on some things. Ranked choice, for instance, just right off the top of my head, I am for repealing, and I know he is not, and he's a pro ranked choice person. And just simple things like that, I think that differ. Nothing, no real negatives about Jesse. I think he's a wonderful, brilliant person. And my heart is never to see two strong Republicans running against each other and splitting votes or doing anything like that. We were both part of the conversation of me running. He needed, and kind of wanting to pivot and come home and focus on his business. And I think he's just making sure that I am a strong opponent, someone that is taking this seriously and hitting the ground running. And I am. I'm not going anywhere. I think this is what I'm doing, and I kind of digging my feet in the ground, knocking the doors and getting my name out there, and letting people know what's important to me. But more than that, wanting to know what's important to people in 28 and what they want to see happen, what they would like.
Well, I think part of the problem here is that in the state of Alaska, we've had a lot of folks who have a registered R or registered D next to their name, or they have the party, they're wearing the pin on their lapel for whatever animal they're supposed to be wearing. And it doesn't necessarily always translate to what people would assume. And, there's been a lot of moves here. As you said, the biggest thing at this point is the ranked choice thing. I mean, that was a big surprise here recently when that came out, and Jesse was on the face of part of this movement to retain ranked choice voting. And I don't think that, that's got some people upset and everything else. And so there's time for a change. And again, like you said, I mean, I know that you had been part of some of these conversations. I mean, even I had heard that, he was trying to get out or anything else. And I think it was a little surprising that he hadn't withdrawn before the time of the final after filing deadline. But I'm glad to see that you're in it to win it. I think it's, at this point, it's important that we're highlighting the differences between the candidates that we know of, and that we need to work on. Let's talk a little bit here, because you've said education is your important one of your key components to why you're running. Let's put you in the hot seat here and say, okay, so let's say that Elexie Moore was representing, the district for this vote, this last go round on SB 140, on the base student allocation, on the increased education funding. Mm-hmm. I mean, what was your take on that? And would you have voted? Would you have voted to increase the funding to the 14, 13 or whatever the number was? Or, is it enough? Is it too much? Is it not enough? If it's not enough, how much is enough? Let's get into some nitty gritty here and start talking about, where are you at as far as the size and scope of education in the state of Alaska?
Yeah. So, wow. The BSA formula, I mean, all of that, I'm also still trying to wrap my mind around, how that is all formulated and what that looks like. And when it comes down to the funds coming in, state, local, federal. But from what I understand, there has been no increase since 2017. I think our current per student which I think that's what we should be looking at, is the total funding per student. And it looks like to be around $20,000 per child right now, which I think is crazy. It seems really high. It seems like that's a lot of money per student, with the results that we're having right now, and with what our children are, with our testing scores, and with the system. I mean, it just seems to me that that's a lot of money being poured into each district, and with not a lot of accountability, not a lot of transparency, and not a lot of results. And so I personally don't think that there needs to be any more money funneling into that until we have some other structure, some transparency and accountability in those places where we can see some results with what we are already pouring into it.
Well, I mean, we had the news media continually, and the legislators and their talking heads and everything else going on and on about how we'd flat funded education. We just we hadn't had an increase. We hadn't done this. We hadn't done that. And unfortunately, while the BSA had only had a slight increase since 2017, like 1 percentage point or something like that, the thing is that, 5 of the last 7 years, we have funded well beyond the BSA. We'd had one-time funding, right. 10, 20, 50, $70 million on top of that. Mm-hmm. And you're right. When you look at the per student funding and you realize that we're expending $21,000, $22,000 for every child in the state, and that education is the second largest line item with $2.4 billion worth of expenditures for 135,000 kids. At some point, you have to start asking questions.
Yeah.
When is enough? And if we're not doing it with what we have, maybe we've got some deeper problems here.
Absolutely. And I think that's what it boils down to. We need to figure out where in the system, why is it not work? Why is this not enough money to be educating these kids? Why do we need more all the time? And I know that was, I think I've been watching and looking at some different data, and it looked like, even though it looks like there was no real increase, and just the tiny one in 2017 to the BSA, I think over the last several years, there's been an increase of funds to the tune of 30-35% given to that budget. Right. So, when you're looking at it in those terms, it has increased and it continues to increase. It may not just look like state dollars, but we have to consider local dollars and federal dollars going into that budget.
Right. I mean, and regardless, again, if they're spending 10 to 70, this last go around $176 million over the BSA. I mean, so you can't say that it's been flat funded, but that's the mantra and that's the approach. Mm-hmm. Although that, simply looking at the BSA is not the greatest bellwether. I mean, we've got bigger issues, we've got systemic issues of, duplication of effort. I mean, how many school districts do we have? How many superintendents, where things could be consolidated down? Right. What if we just pooled healthcare and shared all the healthcare of the various districts into one big pool instead of having them make their own separate thing? There's so many different ways that we could help make it more efficient. And again, the problem is delivering a product that still does not fall in the 48th or 49th out of 50th percentile, right? I mean, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
We need to be looking at all of those things: federal dollars, state dollars, local dollars, and then the results of it. And we need to have accountability.
Yes, we need to have accountability, and we need to have parental choices in this state. There needs to be, I mean, my opinion is that, and I would love to figure out, being on the side of figuring out how we are universal school choice. That's law, that we become one of those 12 states that already has that implemented. And
backpack funding, where the money follows the child.
Yeah.
Instead of going to the district that he lives in, it follows the child where they go.
Exactly.
I mean, I think that's a brilliant idea. That's part of what, correspondence and allotment schools, that's part of what they do. But again, they're only receiving a portion of what the brick and mortar schools are receiving, a fraction of a fraction in the end.
Yeah.
The
homeschool program allotment. I mean, I know Anchorage is a lot better, but still it's a tiny fraction. Out here, I think I think for a high school student, they're seeing, maybe 2,500, 2,700 per student for the whole
Yeah.
year. And that's wild when the state is allocating $20,000, $22,000 per child.
Yeah. No,
Where is it going? Where does the rest of that end up?
Well,
And there's no answers for that.
well, it gets eaten up in overhead. I mean, this is what I've been saying for a long time, that you have the education industrial complex where it has become the business of education. Now, I'm not trying to beat up on there's great teachers out there, there's great people,
Yeah.
but when you've got an industry that's all built up around the administrative process and consuming all these funds in the process of education, instead of looking at the outcome, just making sure that they've got more administrators, more people, everybody's getting their piece of the pie on the way by, then the outcome of the student becomes kind of an afterthought at the end. Is it any surprise that they're consuming $20,000 a student in that regard? I mean, again, we've seen the administrative size of the administrative state in school education go up. Meanwhile, the enrollment continues to decline, and those lines have crossed. And now you've got 2 and 3 administrators for every one teacher that's in the actual classroom. And, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was in high school back in the 80s, there was 45 or 50 teachers in Lathrop High School in Fairbanks, and there was about 10, 12 administrators. That was about right. And today, even if it's 1 for 1, what has that done to the rest of it,
Right. Yeah. And all the overhead, all the extra help and systems and, programs and federal programs that have been implemented throughout the district, and still no real improvement with testing and scores. And our children are literally going into middle school, 6th grade, and a lot of them can't read can't read at even a 6th grade reading level. It's one of those things. And, I appreciate what the governor did in enacting the program for, to get read by 9 at her level. But it's just one of those things where it's like, it's wild that there's this much funding going into the program and to educate these kids, and they're coming out not educated.
You've got high school graduates. 2/3 of high school graduates have to take remedial math to be able to get into a 100 level college course, right? 100 level math course. I mean, that's insane. You just spent $270,000 or whatever it is educating this kid from K through 12. And now you've got to go back to do remedial math so they can get into a basic college math course.
Exactly.
That's insane.
Yeah. There needs to be a real overhaul on looking at how the systems and the accountability is in place. I do think that there has to be.
And like I said, I think it's important to understand that sometimes you have to say something is fundamentally flawed here, right? There's some kind of fundamental, I mean, first of all, you keep wanting to add more and more. Who pays, right? On the one side, who's paying for all that? That's us. At the same time, who's getting paid? What's is it duplication of effort? I mean, we talked about, 53, 54 different school districts all across the state, all with their own boards and their own, all this duplication of effort, where maybe we should consolidate some of that stuff down and make some, make more sense in that regard. Yeah. But if we don't do something, somebody's got to admit that something is fundamentally broken. You can't spend $22,000 per kid and get the 48th or 47th or 48th out of 50th, and then just say, well, if you just give us more money, it'll be better.
No, we've tried that. That's been happening, and there's been no result. So, and that's the truth. Just having the conversations around what does this look like to consolidate? How do we do this better? How do we do this more effectively and efficiently with our money and with the budget? And cuts have to be made for that thing. And education, like you said, is one of the bigger issues, and throwing more money into it with little to no results doesn't make sense to me. So I would be not on the side of of that.
Yeah. Well, the silver lining of COVID is that it did show people that educating their own children was not as hard as they had been told all those
Right.
years, right? I mean, they discovered that they could homeschool, they could do a lot of those things. And so it really opened up people's eyes. And of course, as we talked about with Corey DeAngelis here a few weeks ago, now there's 12 or 13 states who are doing some form of school choice, whether it's ESAs or vouchers or backpack funding. And I think more states are going to move towards that. And more competition is a good thing because it makes everyone better, makes all the, including brick and mortar schools. So we'll see how that goes. Elexie Moore is our guest. We're continuing our discussion here. We'll be back in just a moment. We got one final segment with her, and we will talk about a little bit about cook inlet gas. We'll talk about defined benefits. We'll talk a little bit about some of the other hot issues of the day over there. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with Elexie Moore right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
I am a bad man. You're a bad man. You're a bad man. Make people so upset all the time. Yeah, no, I mean, I think Harold has talked about this. He's in the chat room right now talking about, you got 54 different school districts, each with 54 different payroll departments, 54 different maintenance directors, 54 different, I mean, at what point, and we stopped focusing on the classrooms. I mean, we stopped the story was, oh, we need to save the children. And if you do this BSA increase, all the students will be. But again, there's no mandate to make sure that the BSA actually goes into the classroom.
Right.
It used to be a mandate that 70% of it had to go into the classroom. And now you're lucky if 50% of it makes it in there. Instead, it's being sucked up by all the overhead of these administrators and, the different things like that. So it's a very frustrating situation for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And one that, I mean, it looks, to get in there and pull it apart and really look at, what needs to change and how the how is, that's scary. And there's a lot of risk involved in some of this stuff of, okay, well, overhauling these systems and these things that have been in place for so long, involves risk and involves trying something new. And a lot of people aren't up for that. And I hope that getting some fresh faces and perspectives in Juneau will allow for some of that to happen.
Elexie Moore is our guest. I'm sorry, I'm answering a text message from our next guest.
No
It's been a night. You were having problems with the messages, and my phone fell off the charger last night, so it was at like 12% this morning when I got up.
Oh.
So I can't do I'm trying to juggle the interviews to make sure it's all good. All right. So we're going to dive into this here on some of the other issues. And you said education was the big driver for, for why you got involved, but obviously there's other issues that you are, you're focused on. What about, the permanent fund? I mean, I know that's a hot button issue in the Mat-Su here. I'm having lived in the Mat-Su for the last 10 years, I know how a lot of people feel out here. And it seems like we're kind of all alone. Everybody else has kind of forgotten about the PFD. And it's like, well, it is what it is. But each of us that are out here is like, we really would like to get back to where the PFD was supposed to be. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, following the statutory law, that we should do that. I think it makes it hard that now it's kind of, the PFD is kind of a discretionary fund and, can be used for the budget, and half of it is used and then the other half
whatever they want. It's not even a discretion, it's like a slush fund. What do we want to spend?
Yeah, so exactly. And then, the half that is for us is, a huge portion of it's getting used for other things too. And, that seems like a real, but what do we do? You can't, that's like the biggest fun, our biggest revenue comes from the PFD. That's how we pay the bills here in Alaska.
Well, but here's the thing. Here, what do we do? What would you do, Elexie, if you had this in your household budget and all this stuff was going on? Would you be eating the seed corn? Would you be like continuing to spend and increase your spend as you're biting into things that you're
absolutely not. You make cuts where it's necessary. And I think that's the hardest part is like, okay, where are we going to make cuts? How are we going to do this? And where do we make more money? How do we bring in more revenue? I think that's the question is like my mind goes to, okay, we don't have enough. This is Alaska. We are so rich in resources right under our feet in minerals and in different things for our fossil fuels. And, and there's so much red tape and regulation over all of it. And we can't, and we have a transportation issue to even get to the minerals that need to be extracted and be able to, fold those in to revenue. But I think the biggest deal with, figuring out how to get us a full PFD, which I hope that we can one day. That's the goal, that's the desire. But at the same time, we need to figure out different ways. The 10-year plan from the governor is bleak, and
it's been bleak. That's part of the problem here is that it's showing us one thing. The question is, do we have a revenue problem or do we have a spending problem? I
think we have both. I think Alaska can make more money. I know we can. There's so much wealth here. It's just untapped, and no one wants to risk what it's going to take to make it happen.
I want to revisit this because I think that it's interesting. Your perspective on this is interesting because, I've been fighting this for 25 years on this radio show, and it's interesting to see a fresh take on this from your perspective. So we're going to continue this discussion, and then we'll get into defined benefits and South Central gas and everything else. We're 8 seconds out. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the... Here we go. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right, we're continuing now with Elexie Moore, candidate for House District 28. During the break, we were just talking with her about the PFD, and she said, it'd be nice to get a full PFD again. But you said something that I think is interesting. You said, well, the PFD is the largest revenue source in the state. And here's the thing. It's not a revenue source. Now, Bill Walker changed it, so that's how they account for it. Mm-hmm. But the PFD is a transfer. The PFD has always been a simple transfer from the earnings reserve. Hammond envisioned it that 50% of that money would go to government and 50% would go to the people as the ultimate expression of capitalism in this quasi-socialistic state. They wrote the Constitution to be kind of a socialistic thing, and Hammond's quote was something about the PFD being the ultimate expression of capitalism to try and overcome that because it's your resources and here's your share of it. So they started to account for it as a revenue source. And that, of course, that immediately changed the conversation. We're spending, $22,000 for every man, woman, and child in this state. And the question that I had for you earlier was, do we have a spending problem or do we have a revenue problem? And you said a little bit of both. My answer has always been, we've had a spending problem, and we've had a spending problem for so long that it has become a revenue problem.
Right.
Because that's how they used to frame this 15 years ago. They would frame this as, well, we've got a revenue problem. We don't have a revenue. We've only got 700,000 people in this state,
right?
And you're expending $6 billion on seven. We do not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem, and you've let it go on so long that now we've all become dependent on the spending.
Yeah.
Now it's a revenue problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
We created programs wherever it's a dependency state.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean
to. No, I think that's you're spot on. And I think, in order to get back to a place where, we as Alaskans can get that full PFD, we have to figure out where cuts are made along the way. There's like the fire drill analogy, like, when your house is on fire or your budget's on fire, who takes priority? But even the priority, you get the priority out of the house, the priority still has to make a sacrifice to get the next thing out of the house. I think there's just some of those, I think that analogy just works where it's like, okay, everything probably needs a cut. We need to figure out how to be more responsible and less crazy inflated budget. And that just makes, I think everyone will be sad. I think there's going to be some upset people, but what else do you do? There's not other, besides try to figure out other avenues of revenue. And right now, other avenues of revenue mean we have to spend money to make money.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, there is no political will to cut $800 million out of the budget, right? There's no political will to cut $8 million out of the budget. They attempted to eliminate vacant positions that have been funded but unfilled for years. They attempted to lapse, Mike Shower attempted to lapse like $30 million that from 2 years ago back into and they also, no, we can't do it. We couldn't possibly cut anything. There's no political will. But even if we did that, the problem is that we're rapidly reaching that point to where if we start looking for new revenues, and we've had a lot of talk on this program about the potential for taxation, whether it's sales tax or broad-based, a flat tax, an income tax, whatever it is. The problem is that we're going to push into that doom loop territory where the cost of living is going to be so high, it will drive people out, which will then cost spread to, it'll be spread out amongst fewer people after that. And then some of those people will move out, and it just keeps the burden just keeps staying the same because nobody's willing to make any cuts. I mean, yes, you're right. Everyone's going to have to feel the pain. There can't be well, it's all great except for in my backyard. Oh, cuts are great except for in my backyard. It has to happen in everybody's backyard. Am I wrong?
Yeah, and I think that's the way it needs to be approached. I mean, don't single anything out. Go down the list. Where can you what percentage can these, I mean, even if they couldn't afford it, it's just one of those things. If you can't pay your bills, you have to make a sacrifice somewhere, you have to, this is getting cut, and then it's up to the person receiving the funds, the program, the plan, whatever its discretion for is having to pivot. It's we all have to pivot now to make money, to figure out how to, deflate the budget here and live within some more, I don't know what the word is, just our means, what we can afford.
We're talking with Elexie Moore right now, who is a candidate for House District 28 here in the Valley. Elexie, we've only got about 5.5, 6 minutes here. I do want to talk for a bit about, two of the other big issues. Defined benefits really didn't make it out of the Senate, but you could see that it's getting set up to be a big issue probably this upcoming session. Yeah. I don't know how familiar you are with defined benefits and the problems. We had a tier 1 through 3. That put us underwater. We had a $13 billion unfunded liability to that at one point. We whittled it down to just around $7 billion right now. But now there are some legislators, especially those in the Senate, that want to push this back and create a new level of defined benefits to try and retain and keep good employees. I mean, that's a problem, right? I mean, to me, this is an issue that is that's pretty huge, especially considering the Reason Foundation said the costs of it are going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of almost $1 billion a year over the course of 10 or 14 years. I mean, that's a big number.
Yeah. I think that, just starting to kind of brink and learn and dive into the defined benefits and the defined contribution situation. And, if it really boils down to keeping good teachers and keeping good state workers, I think it's worth the conversation of what else can we do? Where else can we find innovative ways to keep these people happy, to keep them wanting to stay on board. I think that we have to figure out how, as a state and as for state workers and for the districts and teachers, to create a culture where people are being respected, they want to come to work and they want to figure it out, and that they have good retirement at the end of it, that they're rewarded for their sacrifice and for their time. Do I think that spending nearly $9 billion to bring back pensions is worth that? I don't know. I guess I would have to learn more. Right now, just looking at the data, it doesn't seem cost effective for the state.
The other issue, of course, is the South Central gas, right? I mean, this is a huge deal. South Central gas is
The shortage.
they're talking about a shortage in 2027 and everything else. But it seems like everybody's panicking and trying to find a way to make Alaskan gas work. And yet nobody's really, talking about, well, imports could be a good short-term 10-year solution or etc. What's your position on this? Do you have enough, have you gotten into this enough? What are your thoughts?
I know we have a shortage. I don't know. I mean, I guess I actually was just talking to, I asked Mike Schauer if he would sit down and talk to me a little bit about the budget and these issues. But, I think if the shortage is going to actually be something that we're up against and that we face, I think that is the solution would be having to import gas. If we can't, we need to, but also the bigger picture for me would be trying to find an innovative plan and a comprehensive plan for a gas pipeline, the transportation to do that, the funds and how to figure that out. I think we have all the gas in the world. We have to figure out how to make it work for us and be the source as well for other people to be purchasing.
Well, I mean, that's all well and good. And again, I love this love affair with Alaskan gas, but there's an economic component in there if it's not economic to get it done. And we have to find gas somewhere else in the short term. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't we at least be looking at that as an option, a possibility?
I think so. Yeah, I think no option should be off the table. I mean, we have to have gas. And so I think that would be absolutely, I think you're right. We do need to be looking at other options to bring it in if we're up against a shortage like they're predicting here.
All right. Elexie Moore, I'm sorry, I ran us a little late here. We got about 20 seconds. Where do folks find out about you? Where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah, no problem. My website is www.moreforak. You'll find my website there, my issues, a little bit more about myself. My phone number is 907-841-4945. Please feel free to give me a call. Any questions or concerns? I am looking forward to getting to know all of you in my district and representing you well.
Folks, out of time. We got Mia Costello up next. All right, Elexie, I always like to give the candidates a final bite at the apple here if they want to just, one more thing. I'm sorry. Mia is trying to get a hold of me. I just want to give you a final bite at the apple for anything that we didn't hit on, things that you want to, jump into or expound on. If you want to talk a little bit more about the Alaska gas issue, I think that, I think Brian kind of lets it all out and basically says, if you can't monetize it, it's just an unrequited love affair, which I think is where a lot of people are. That's what I keep hearing. Oh, it's Alaska gas. We got 17 trillion cubic feet. Yes, we do. But if you can't economically bring it from the North Slope down to Tidewater or down to where we can burn it, then it might as well be on the moon, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we can't ignore the other issues of getting it here other than that. So anyway, I want to give you a chance to sound off and give you the last couple.
No, I agree with you. I think, they call it the pipe dream, and, it's something that's exciting to talk about, and the future of that, and, the what ifs, and, how do we make it happen? And, we all know that that's a potential. But it was I've learned so much just sitting and listening to Kevin McCabe talk about transportation and what it takes to, what it's going to take the state. to even have any of those things happen one day. And so it's going to be important for all of us to get behind that, get behind transportation, get behind rail, get behind the port, and have more conversations about that and how to make those things happen so that one day, we can have a pipeline for gas, that we can be mining these, copper and graphite and finding different ways to bring the revenue from our natural resources as a source. So, I think that's important. But I think you're spot on. I think we do need to start talking about how do we get more gas here and now. So,
well, just in case, right? I mean, it's just in case.
Right.
I would love to have Alaskan gas, and we've got bigger hurdles of if we have to import gas, it can't be from America because of the Jones Act, and it's got to be overseas. And I mean, it's a hot mess, but if we at least don't have all these questions examined, we'll get hit with, we're going to get hit with a lot of bad stuff. We'll be hit with a shortage in a couple of years, and then, people will be paying Fairbanks prices in the Matsu for gas and heating. I mean, that was one of the big benefits when I moved down here from Fairbanks. I saved $8,000 or $5,000 in the first 8 months.
Wow.
Just in heating my house alone. I mean, It's insane. So nobody wants to have to be paying those prices down there now. We need to get with it. So,
yeah. And I know the conversations are happening, and, I know Kathy Tilton is working, on trying to source and figure out different ways to, alleviate how to, the shortage and where to find ways to pull from and things like that. So it'll be fun to be in those conversations and listen and hear and learn what can and can't happen. And I'm looking forward to that. If the opportunity presents itself and the people vote, and that is
should be an exciting time, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we live in interesting times.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. But thank you for having me on the show. This was really fun to get my feet wet and figure it out. And
wasn't as painful as you thought it was going to be, was it?
No, man, my heart was pumping when we first got on here. But I really appreciate you, and this has been really fun, and it's been cool to dialogue with you and make notes for myself, where things that I could immerse myself in a little bit more and learn a little bit more about. Thank you for bringing up different subjects for me that, bring to my, things that I've read and things that I've
broaden your horizons. Yeah. Well, keep listening to the show. It'll be a master class on all the things that people are talking about and the different issues. We dive into it every week.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. I've been enjoying your show in the morning. So it's good to be here.
Well, thank you so much for coming on board. We appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks for doing this today. We'll see you again in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Elexie Moore, our guest. Let's go test the audio for Mia Costello, who's going to be joining us this morning via just the audio here for her this morning. We'll test it out. Good morning, Mia. How are you?
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good. Hey, look, you're loud and proud, so you're all good. We finally found the email. It was hidden down there somewhere.
I think so.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's like it was 16 million different directions that we could go, and we finally got her down. So it's all good as long as we get to the right place in the end. That's what's important. All right, we're about 2 minutes out here, Mia. So we'll jump back here. I'll put you back in the green room and get you on hold, and then we will jump right to you here when we get back. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike. Michael.
All right. Thanks. All right. Mia Costello, our guest here on the program. Let me snap all this stuff out of the way, and then we'll go back over here. Look at that. We got it. All right. Just another beautiful day in paradise. Hit with a lot of other stuff. I think the F word is a better choice, but I understand this is radio. Yeah, we got hit with a lot of things going on this morning. All right, so we're going to kick things off with Mia Costello here in just a hot second, who again is running for State House. Why does it keep doing that? All right, this is pissing me off this morning. There we go. Sorry, one of my programs is not working right. There we go. We're going to continue. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, baby, live around the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska. This your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning. It's time to jump into it with hour two. We just finished up with Elexie Moore from up in the Mat-Su, talking about her inaugural run for State House up in District 28. You can go back and watch that on the replay if you missed it, or pick it up on the podcast wherever you find podcasts, including Spotify. But in this hour, we're coming back to more of instead of the new recruit, we've got the veteran political person, and that is former Senator Mia Costello, who joins us this morning to talk about her run for this time State House, moving over into the State House territory. And we're going to talk with her about that here right now. So let's bring her on board and say good morning to Mia Costello. Good morning, Mia. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be on your show. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for coming in and being part of it. It's been a heck of a season. This last couple of years has definitely made for interesting. You know, it's what's the old Confucian saying of "May you live in interesting times." We're there, right? I mean, this is kind of an interesting circumstance. Here we are. I want to talk a little bit for folks who don't know you. Can you give me a little bit of background about, who you are, your service record? I know that you just came back from the RNC. You served as a delegate down in Wisconsin. So you've been a busy lady, but give us a little bit of background here.
Well, great. So, Michael, thank you. I've actually served in the State House and the Senate for over 12 years, representing West Anchorage. And I was born and raised here and grew up and raising my two boys here in Anchorage with my husband, who's also a lifelong Alaskan. And in my time in the legislature, I'm really proud of my accomplishments. I was the sponsor of the Castle legislation, which says you can defend yourself anywhere you have a right to be. I also introduced the repeal of Senate Bill 91 to get the crime under control, and was really proud of that. I'm a supporter of, was a prime sponsor of the parental notification citizens initiative that passed with the voters' support. And I've been probably one of the most outspoken proponents for a strong economy, and served as the chair of Senate Labor and Commerce for the time that I served in the Senate, and also served in leadership positions while I was there. And in the House, I served on the House Finance Committee, and I was really proud to bring things back for the district. We got lighting for Jewel Lake Road, which has the state's largest elementary school. The lighting project was something I'm very proud of. Helping constituents. I had a constituent with a child with cancer, and I was able to get approval for a raffle so their family could raise money for healthcare costs. And that young man is doing quite well now. And so just really, hands-on legislator. I work really hard. And, what you said about what we're facing right now, I think we're in challenging and critical times. And I felt compelled to get back into it so that I could join the House majority and help strengthen that House majority there, and work on specifically energy security is what one of my focuses will be once I get back to Juneau.
Mia Costello, our guest candidate for House District 15. You've been doing a lot of good work over the years, and you've decided to jump back from the Senate into the House. Can you describe, and I knew that there was a lot of, with the redrawing of lines and people getting in, getting out. At one point, Tom McKay was going to run in that seat, and then he went to move to another. There was a lot of horse trading going on there. Can you describe what happened in that regard and where you're at with that?
Oh, absolutely. So Tom McKay currently serves in House District 15, and he has decided to put his name in for the Senate seat. And so I am running in the seat that he currently serves. So it's now an uncontested seat, and it's the area around Jewel Lake, Sand Lake, Campbell Lake in West Anchorage. And the interesting thing about this race, Michael, which I really want to impress upon the listeners, is that this isn't going to be an easy walk in the park. The person who's running came very close to running last time, within less than 10 votes of winning. And the Democrats have poured $100,000 into my opponent's race. And so we are working really hard.
Already.
Yeah.
We're not even to the primary yet, and you guys are all going through to the general. So they've already poured $100,000 in. We haven't even hit the primary yet.
That's right. So they're taking it very seriously, and so we are too. And I've been out walking door to door, talking to neighbors, and having fundraisers. My next fundraiser is Monday at Little Italy, and I'm doing that with Tom McKay.
Oh, so a combined fundraiser between you and Tom to get things done. That's great. I get to see both what their senator and their representative could look like as they go through. So that's going to be good. All right. So you got some background, you got some history. You were out though, Mia, and all I could think of every time I see somebody who's been out for a while, they come. All I can think of is that thing from The Godfather where he's like, "I was out, but they pulled me back in." What what made you decide to jump back in? I mean, because you were out and you were off doing other things. What made you decide to come back? Is it hard to serve? Is it a certain issue? Or you just couldn't stand it? What was it that made you come back?
So when I look at what's happening in the legislature right now, and they're really grappling with energy. So we have an energy crisis on our hands, impending one. And I look at, what I can offer the process and my experience in the Senate, my experience in the House. And there are things we need to do to make sure that we don't see double or triple of our energy costs to keep our lights on and keep our homes heated. And so, I worked for the mayor as his legislative director. I was able to help get funding for homelessness and work on things to get through in Juneau. But really, it's the fact that we are in a challenging situation right now in our state. And I did have people ask me if I would come back. And so I decided that this was a really great opportunity. And so that's what I'm doing. And my website, by the way, is votemia.com. And you can see there some of the priorities. And then also, if you want to donate, that's where you can donate.
All right. Mia Costello is our guest candidate for House District 15. Let's revisit here. We're actually clipping right along. So let's get into the discussion. The biggest issue, Mia, this last go around, of course, was education. I mean, right out of the gate, the House was busy. The House majority was working from day one, it seemed like, on this issue of educational funding. And they were huckleberry buck, and they came out in the first 30 days with a plan. and that was immediately, chewed up and everything else, and it came back down. And so then we came back for part 2, and they came back, and there was a big pushback. We saw a lot of fervor in the newspapers and in the media about how could you not fully fund education, and we flat funded it, and a lot of things that were just, I would say, factually inaccurate is a polite way to say it, but that's kind of the pressure that people in the legislature were seeing. And in the long run, we came back with an increase. Now, we all have a feeling that they're going to come back and ask for even more this year, because 1413 is what they're asking for, not 650. And so what is your thought on the process as it went this last session? Where is it going? And where should school funding be? Should it be a focus on the BSA? Should we be a focus on efficiencies in school funding? What's your take on this?
So my focus on education would be how you deliver education. I don't know if you're aware, Michael, but I'm actually a nationally recognized high school classroom teacher.
Right.
I've taught in several districts in Alaska, and my degree I actually got from UAS down there in Juneau. So I have a master's in education, and the first classroom opportunity that I had, it was a program that was designed by Fortune 500 companies that had decided that the education system wasn't working. So what they did is they came up with a model of education. And these are business people who are receiving the product of our schools. And they were saying, we aren't preparing young people for jobs. So Fortune 500 companies started an outfit called Connect.com. It's Connect.com. And they funded 3 school districts across the United States to implement this process of education and a new way to deliver education. The high school that I taught in Alaska was one of those schools. And essentially what we did was we had multi-age classrooms, because the world is multi-age. When you go into the working environment, you're just not with people your age, you're with everybody. So it's more real world. And also it focused on authentic assessment, so that when you test students and when you're asking them to do things, it's as much like the real world as you can get. And so what I did, I taught government. I took my kids to the Capitol, and they debated the budget live on public television in a mock House Finance Committee debate. So you can see that the more real world you are, and I'm a huge fan of vocational technical education, VocTech. I believe that most of our young people who graduate do not actually go on to college. They want to go right into the job market.
Right.
So I'm a huge fan of King Tech, where you go and you get skills that can translate right into that job market. And even if you do go to college, those skills are valuable also. So that's what I would focus on. When I was in the legislature, I had many bills related to education. One of them had to do with forward funding. So what we're doing right now is we're funding our schools after the budgets are being prepared by those schools. So what you have is you've set up this situation where you're making people upset about the fact that the funding isn't done yet, and then you have this natural constituency that's coming to Juneau, and all they're asking for is money. Well, there's a lot more to education than the money. It is really an opportunity to look at how we deliver education. The other way you can do it is by team teaching. So you take a math and science teacher, you give them the same students, and then they can work together as professionals to deliver lessons about math and science that go together. Same with with other areas in our schools. And so I saw that firsthand, Michael, and many of my students that I had are actually out and about. They're doing quite well. They're succeeding and they're thriving because they took ownership of their education when they were in school.
Well, this is part of the thing, is that, we have to admit that the current educational model is just not been working. I mean, we're pouring ever expanding amounts of money, exponentially expanding amounts of money into the current system. And yet we've been falling out in the 47th, 48th percentile out of 50th, as far as academic achievement. Now, you're talking about a totally different style of teaching, a totally different way of looking at it. I think that's exciting to be able to say, here's some different options and things that we can do. The problem is that there's been a lot of pushback. I mean, we saw what happened in the legislature this last year, where they weaponized kids and students to come in and pound on legislators' doors, to stand around them at a table and basically shout at them over this whole BSA thing, and, trying to keep the business as usual thing going. I mean, that's part of the bigger problem here. I mean, you're right. We need to make a fundamental shift, but it's not just on funding. The fundamental shift needs to be on the way that we're doing things.
Absolutely. And it's really exciting. And, if there's one thing I think we all agree on, is that we all want our schools to be excellent. We all want our sons and daughters and grandchildren to go into an education system that we have confidence in, that they're getting the best education they can. And it is happening. I mean, it is, and we all know it. There are success stories all over the state of Alaska. But overall, I think there's a sense that we're not doing very well. And so I think we need to recognize that, and we need to come together with a spirit of cooperation. Fighting over the BSA has never been very productive. And again, the focus isn't always money. I mean, in your own home, in your own family, in your own problem-solving process, when you go solve a problem, money is a part of things often, but really it's innovation and creativity. It's looking at what are the best ways to deliver education, who's doing it the best, and what are they doing?
Right.
Another thing we did is we looked at recruitment and retention. And, I was one of the ones that helped stop the return to defined benefit, because that will put our state at huge financial risk.
Right. Well, we're gonna get into that. Hold the line for a second, Mia. We're up against the break. We need to continue. Hold up. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Mia Costello, candidate for House District 15, is our guest. We're back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Dukes Show.
Okay, we're in the break right now with Mia Costello, continuing on our discussion here. I mean, I guess my question still becomes, and I ask it, but we kind of went far afield here, Mia. But I mean, how much is enough? I mean, how much do we need to spend on a per student basis? I mean, they came back with this thing of 1413 as the answer for what they need. But I mean, that's nearly a doubling or tripling of what we have right now. I mean, when is enough, and how, and who pays for all this, right? I mean, that's the second question, is who pays for that?
Well, I mean, you're right, Michael. It's literally just a random discussion about a number that, you're throwing a dart at a dartboard, and you're trying to find a number that everyone can coalesce around, when in fact, what we should be starting out with, the conversation should start with, where is the money going now? Where is that money going? And the Anchorage School District, they have a responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, to come to us and tell us where the funding is going, so that we understand and we can have a better conversation. What part of that is energy costs? And we know that that's going to be a consideration. And the foundation formula also.
What part is duplication of effort, right? I mean, which part? We've got 50 plus 53, 54 different school districts, all basically with duplications of efforts, duplicative boards and presidents and superintendents and all this other kind of stuff. Some as small as 100 students, some as large as 1,000. Why aren't we talking about consolidating that, or sharing and pooling healthcare costs, or doing a lot of these other things? It's like everybody's doing their own thing, and that's what they want to continue to do.
Absolutely. And it's all driven by the foundation formula, which is based off of student count. And then in different areas of the state, there's multipliers to address, the costs that schools see. But if we're looking at increased energy costs, why don't we pull out the energy costs and have that dealt with separately and address energy? Because the high cost of energy is going to affect all of us. And I do think that's also a part of the discussion. But education has been one of the most important areas, where a person can change their life dramatically. You do well in school, you get opportunities, because of that. And it really is the foundation of the rest of your life. And so it's very important that we get it right. And it has been disappointing over the time that I've served that the discussion has always centered on the funding and not necessarily what we can do to improve the delivery of education for our young people who spend most of their time, most of their day is spent in the schools.
And it is definitely... It's definitely a challenge when you've got all these kids in there and the teachers are trying to corral them. And I know there's, issues of parenting and everything else, but when all you hear back from them is, if we only had a few more dollars, we could really do it right this time. And yet we're still failing downwards towards these lower percentiles. I mean, at some point, I just want somebody to say something is fundamentally broken and more money is not going to fix it. That's what I'm looking for somebody to say. And I think you've come close with, this discussion on different styles of learning and everything else. But we've got to stop this whole mandate of if only we spent more, we would get a better outcome. We've seen how that's worked, not just in Alaska, but across the country.
No, more money does not necessarily mean a better outcomes. When you talk about what's happening in the classroom, when you have an engaged classroom and they understand the relevance of what they're learning and they're excited about it, you don't have those issues with discipline. And when you have multi-age classrooms, you don't have those problems with discipline. And I will say it, more money does not solve the problem. It is not the answer. It's not the silver bullet.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to rejoin here. We're going to continue. Mia Costello is our guest. We will move on to some of the other issues, including defined benefits, since she just brought it up. And then we'll move over into South Central Gas and some other issues and things that she may want to focus on as well. The Michael Dukes Show, Common Sense, Liberty-Based, Free Thinking Radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do it. Here we go.
The Michael Dukes Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Continuing now, Mia Costello, candidate for House District 15. We just finished up. We were just before the break talking about, moving over to defined benefits, and where that's going and what's happening with that and how she had stopped that originally. Now, there's been a big push, Mia, to bring this back. And of course, the argument is that, this is good for employee retention. This is good for keeping the employees because we have so few employees in the state government. Although, I mean, we've got unfilled positions that we can't defund. We've got, monies that have lapsed that we can't reappropriate. We've got all kinds of problems there. But there's no studies that show that defined benefits is going to, this is all a huge experiment. And of course, the danger is that we know defined benefits cost a lot of money. And in fact, the first fiscal note they voted on before it actually even got to the second fiscal note. But I mean, Reason says that it could be upwards of $1 billion a year over 10 or 14 years. I mean, that's a significant amount of money.
It is. And when you expose the state to that kind of risk and the unfunded liability, we actually put in $3 billion towards paying down the unfunded liability, $3 billion. And it's, this is not small change. This is significant. And, ideally, if you want this situation, you're going to expose the state to risk. And so it's really not, it's not something that is in the best interest of the state. There are hybrid plans, and I think we were working on looking at different hybrid plans. But the 401k is something you can take with you, and we did see that a lot of families moved during COVID. They wanted to move to be closer to family members down south or relatives, so they can take care of them. So the 401k that we have now is something that is affordable. I did sit on a recruitment and retention task force, Michael, and you're right. Defined benefit is not the only reason that people, leave school districts or they're leaving the state.
Right.
And so we have to look at that as a whole and not just say, oh, this will solve the problem, because I think you're right. And, our public safety, excuse me, officers, they're interested in this issue too. And I know that, we value them very much, and we want to make sure that once we invest in people that they're sticking around. But there are other reasons why people are leaving, and particularly in rural Alaska, a lot of it has to do with housing. So we have to address our housing problem.
Right. Well, and again, if you look at any study of why employees stay or why they go, it's more the culture of the workplace than anything else. That's one of the biggest drivers outside of, pay and retirement are important. Don't get me wrong, pay and benefits and retirement, but the culture, the day-to-day culture is what drives people. And so maybe we should be analyzing some of that as well, because again, everything that we're hearing right now about how this is going to save the state employment problem, which I question, first of all, how much of a problem it really is. But even if it's all anecdotal, there is no proof in any of this. And the fact that defined benefits have basically been reduced across the country because they understand that they are unsustainable, particularly because you cannot predict what a benefit will cost 20 years in the future, and yet you're defining for the employee that you will be paid that benefit regardless of what the cost is. That's how we ended up $13 billion in the hole to begin with.
That's right. And the actuarial reports were incorrect at that time, and we're still looking for accurate actuarials. I think that's something, that needs to be shared, that it all sounds great, but then somebody's left footing the bill, and the state cannot afford to have a greater unfunded liability. It's just not something that is in the best interest for the state of Alaska. And so we have to recognize that, and not just necessarily, sign on to something that we can't afford.
Right. And of course we know that the camel's nose under the door on this is, it'll just be for first responders. It'll just be for first responders and teachers. And then next thing you know, it'll be for all 27,000 borough or state employees, plus then the university, plus the, it'll expand. And it was, we had a candidate on here 2 weeks ago who said he thought it was going to be not only cost neutral, that we would actually save money by going to defined benefits. And I'm like, how in the world would that even, how would you, and but this is what they're telling people. And people don't understand the danger, because the problem is that when you enter into a contract with an employee based on that, it is then enshrined in the Constitution because of the way the Constitution is written. So you owe them. And if something goes wrong, the corpus of the fund is actually at risk. Some federal court could say, you've got a contract, you've got a big pot of money there, you got to drag money out of it to pay it. And that's the biggest challenge here.
It is. And, that's one of the reasons why this bill hasn't actually gotten across the finish line. It's been discussed, and we've been looking at it, and it's been proposed, year after year. And so it is a huge concern, and the finance table really is where those discussions should happen. And you have Bert Stedman, who's the co-chair of Senate Finance, and he's not on board with this.
Right. No, even Bert Stedman, who I normally disagree with, is like, whoa, even he said, wait a second, this is not right. This is not what's going on. All right. So this is going to be a battle that I'm sure is going to come up this year. And if you're back down there, I hope to see you in the front and center on this fight as we go forward. Big question on the PFDs and the budgets. Obviously, the PFD, we've all seen the governor's 10-year forecast. It's looking pretty bleak. The PFD at the current rate of consumption will probably be eaten up in the next 3 years, maybe, because just government is going to grow on its own, regardless of anything else that happens, just contractual obligations and everything. And pretty soon there will be no PFD. How do we save it? How do we save it? I mean, I know that, we've been fighting about this since Bill Walker, vetoed a big chunk of that. And here we sit today, not having access to our full PFD, not following the law. Where does it go from here?
Well, I think, Michael, what you've seen is over the last several years is that the amount of the dividend is left to the very end of the process. And then after all the budgets are done, it's, everyone comes and coalesces around a certain amount. And I think at a certain point, that's kind of become the writing on the wall is that we've dismissed looking at that formula. And I actually, I don't anticipate that would change. I do think that it's important we have a spending cap, which the percent of market value does give us. So we are working off of a spending cap. And when we talk about our budgets and we talk about how we can increase revenue so that we can avoid an income tax, which, by the way, I'm against an income tax. I believe the best way to bring money into our state is to develop our natural resources. And I think that is our biggest asset that we have. I think we have tremendous opportunity in our resource industry. And I think that is where we should, be putting our focus, making it easier to develop resources by, reducing regulation and government, too much government regulation. And so I believe that responsible resource development is really the future.
So growing our way out of the problem is what you're saying through resource development. And you said that the POMV is in effect a spending cap. You're saying because of the restriction on the percentage that can be drawn. Is that what you're saying? Is this is the spending cap right there because of that? Is that how I'm reading that comment?
Yes. So you're spending less than you're earning. So you're bringing in more than you're earning. You want the growth of the fund to be greater than every year than what you're taking from it. So the permanent fund is constantly growing is what you want. You never want that fund to be going the opposite direction. You want it to be constantly growing, reinvesting.
That's part of the problem, though, is that they limit themselves to the POMV number to draw, but then they just take it all, right? They take the POMV number out for both the PFD and for government spend, and then they just bogart a big chunk of what the PFD was supposed to go to the people. And then they look for more revenues outside of that. I mean, don't we need, going back to the whole fiscal policy working group thing, don't we really need a constitutional spending cap before we do anything else, before we go to explore new resources or develop new revenues or develop new resource streams or, before we bring in more money? Shouldn't we put a smart constitutional spending cap in so that whatever does come in at least is offset and doesn't just get consumed by government because it's there?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I think, the Senate, we voted on a percent that would go towards the dividend and a percent that would go for government spending. And we weren't able to get that across the finish line in the House. But I do see your point. I mean, it would be best if we had that certainty. And I think certainty is really important when you're looking at budgets. So absolutely, a constitutional spending cap would be, a really good idea. I think, though, that you have to also have some flexibility in times of crisis and what have you. But I do think that our budget and the amount of time we spend on the budget, we should be further down the road as far as a plan. That committee that came up with a bunch of ideas, I don't support many of their ideas. I don't support an income tax. I don't think that's, the way to go. I think that the more that you can leave money in the pockets of families in Alaska to use how they want, businesses, give them the ability to grow. I think that's how you keep an economy strong.
So you're talking about the fiscal policy working group. You don't support the fiscal policy working group's findings on, shrinking, cutting budgets, putting a spending cap in, constitutionalizing the PFD, starting some form of new revenue, be it a sales tax or an income tax, and taxing the oil industry. You don't support those ideas.
No, I support some of the ideas, but I do not support the taxation of Alaskans as a solution. So I don't support the taxation. I support many of the other items.
Are you a fan of, are you more of a fan then of taking, here's the thing, we're being taxed right now. We're being taxed by the taking of the PFD. So we're already paying a tax. Now, the question is the tax equitable across the full spectrum? I think the answer to that is no, because it's mostly affecting those who are in the lower 70 to 80% incomes versus the upper ones. And Brad and I have talked about this a lot. But the thing is, we've got a whole bunch of people who are basically saying no taxes in Alaska no matter what, but we're already paying a tax. So the question is, and according to the 10-year plan, that PFD is going to be gone pretty quick, probably, again, 3 years maybe, based on the increase in the size and scope of government right now. So then the PFD will be all gone, and the increases will continue because we have a spending problem, and then they're going to come back to us with the tax anyway. Shouldn't we be at least talking about this, about the options of what, if there was going to be, what would be the best kind?
Yeah, definitely. I think what I've heard in Juneau is a sales tax, seasonal sales tax has been something that I think people have, been considering. I think that, that might be something we look at. But again, we do have resources in Alaska and we should be developing them. And that brings in revenue to the state. That is where, we do the best. And so I think, looking at it holistically is great, but, definitely I just don't believe that taxation is how you grow an economy.
All right, we're going to continue with Mia Costello, candidate for House District 15. One final segment dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, we're in the break right now. Mia Costello is our guest. I'm sorry, Mia, I'm not trying to beat this dead horse, but I just, it comes back to, again, this idea that they're already taking money from citizens through the PFD cuts. And Gary Stevens basically got up and said, our fiscal plan is 25-75. That was their fiscal plan. Ben Carpenter was over on the other side trying to put these pieces of the fiscal policy working group plan together. And Gary Stevens says, our plan is 25-75. But if you put it on a graph and you put the 10-year forecast out there and the size and growth of government and where it goes, the PFD basically gets subsumed into the budget within, again, 36 months, 48 months, somewhere in that time frame. And then where do we do? And you're talking about growing resources. I'm 100% behind you, but that has got a long tail. Growing resources is a 5 to 10 year issue. What do we do in year 3, year 4? What are we doing in the meanwhile? How are we shoring that up? Are we making any cuts? We've become such a dependency state that anytime somebody starts talking about cuts, everybody clutches their pearls and says, well, that's fine, but not in my backyard. Where do we go from there?
Well, I can tell you that, some people don't actually agree with us that the taking of the dividend is a tax. I do see it that way, but they want to tax you more. So some of the things that we're doing down in Juneau are fighting bad ideas from becoming a reality. When Walker was governor, he had every tax you can think of. And the other thing, too, when you talk about the long, for the resource development takes a long time. Yes, however, we are fighting efforts to make it harder to make those decisions when you want to increase taxes on the oil and gas industry. So, making Alaska open for business is a daily fight and struggle in the legislature because you always have the effort of people who want to tax more. They want to burden industry. They want to burden business more. And so you have to be vigilant and make sure that those efforts are not, making things worse. But we do have projects, that are in the works, and we do have investment that's happening. But those decisions made in those boardrooms about investing in Alaska, they're looking at what the legislature is doing, and they're looking at, whether or not we're making it harder to have a business here in Alaska. And so I think that we have to be very vocal about wanting to be open for business, and we have to keep those efforts from, coming, to fruition when you're talking about an income tax, or you're talking about taxing the oil industry more. Those are decisions that affect what businesses are going to do in the future. So it is a day-to-day thing. I agree on, where you're going with this, that we have to make sure that we have a plan for our budget and we are cutting. I've always said that we should be zero-based budgeting.
Well,
Most
sure.
of the budgets are very similar to what the governor's, has been introducing. We don't really cut that much.
Right. Well, that's part of the problem here, is that there is no political will to actually cut much from the budget. Like I said, I mean, we get a $6 billion budget. Somebody starts talking about cutting, $6 million out of a $6 billion budget, and somebody has apoplexy over it. Well, you couldn't do that. I mean, it's frustrating, and we've created a dependency state. The problem, again, is that we can see where this is going. We've graphed it out. We can see where things are going. And we've already seen some of the language, free rides die hard. We're going to have to pay our fair share. We know what's happening. They're going to consume all of the available dollars. And while I agree with you on the resource development being key to the expanding future of Alaska, I mean, when you're talking about a long tail of 5, 10, 15 years to start seeing payback on some of that, we've got to do something in the meanwhile. Because at this point, Mia, just based on the mathematics and the arithmetic, taxation, real taxation, not this PFD faux taking of it's a tax, but it's not like an overt tax, but a real taxation is inevitable based on the numbers that they're putting out there right now and the rate of government expansion. Because simply through contract obligations, we're going to see $150 to $200 million a year increase in state government if you guys did nothing else. And that means in 5 years, it's another $1 billion on top of what we're doing. And there goes all the rest of the PFD, right?
Right. So there in the budget, there are revenue generating programs, and there are programs that just cost money. So when you look at programs that actually bring in more money to the state, those are the things that you need to bolster. So for example, when I was on the House Finance Committee, we gave money to the permitting program so they can permit faster. You're talking about how long it takes these things to come online, as if it's inevitable that they take that long. They don't need to be taking that long,
Right.
Michael.
All right, hold on. We're about to rejoin. We're into it now. Hold on. We're about to do this. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Mia Costello, our guest. Here we go. All right, we're continuing with Mia Costello, our guest here this morning. And she and I were just hot and heavy into it. We're talking about resource development, and I'm talking about the long tail of resource development that usually it takes, 5, 10, 15 years to really see the paybacks on that. And she's like, yes, usually, but we can make it faster. And she was just telling me about it emphatically. So Mia, there are levers that can be pulled, you're saying, to make this faster, stronger, smarter, the $6 million man kind of thing. Give it to me here. What do we need to do?
Well, Michael, I was responding to your claim that it's almost inevitable that projects take so long to come online, that we've just become complacent, and we've just heard it over and over again that, from start to finish, projects can take, decades. They take a very long time. And I was just telling you that they don't have to take that long. There are, when I served on the House Finance Committee, we invested in the permitting department to help with the backlog. And permitting is something that, is very important for projects, and they have to get through the permitting. But when there's a backlog, that's part of why it takes so long. And so there, as I mentioned to you earlier, there are state programs that are money making, and then there are those that just take money. So you look at those programs and departments that are generating investment into Alaska. When we invest in those things, we get a better return. So we do need to cut the budget, and we do need to be very we need to know exactly why we're cutting, and which, not just do it across the board cutting, because that can end up hurting you in the long run. So in the resource development industry, or look at fish and game. It's very important that we fund fish and game. It's one of the lowest, budgets that we have for departments, but how incredibly important is fish and game, right? So we can't just cut across the board percentage wise. We have to go in, and what I prefer to do is cut programs versus just reduce budgets. So you don't want to, just do it haphazardly. Right. You want to do it thoughtfully.
Right. Well, this leads us to our discussion now, of course, on South Central Gas, because this is one of the big issues up there. And I have a lot of questions about this, quite honestly. I know that there's been a lot of discussions about, how much gas is actually in the Cook Inlet. Is somebody sitting on their hands? Is there, we haven't seen the phase 2 report yet from the utilities, where they said they were going to have a phase 2 report out in the first part of the year. We still haven't seen it. Their solution was they were going to come back with a solution. Was it better to import? Was it better to try and find a way to bring it down from the North Slope? Was there more exploration in the Cook Inlet? What's your position on this? And should the government be, how deeply should the government be involved in this? Because we're talking about like royalty relief and other things. Who's paying for all this, and what should be going on with that?
Well, it is a huge priority, the energy situation that we have. I mean, if there is something that's going to affect families directly, it is this. It's heating your home, it's turning the lights on, and I think all hands on deck is what we need. Before we really get anywhere, we do know that we need to update our transmission lines. So even if you go solve the problem elsewhere, you're always going to have our transmission lines that need to be upgraded. And so there's that. And I know that that's something that I would be focusing on in the legislature. I think, we need to look at the reserve-based lending and the royalty relief. Certainly, these are some things that will help companies. And interestingly enough, not all solutions help all the companies, right? It's not like one solution helps everybody. So
right.
You have to look at a combination of solutions.
I've got a real question about reserve-based lending. I've got a real question about that, because, we're leasing them our land to essentially develop, and then they're going to borrow using our land as collateral against, how does that even work?
Well, Michael, I'm not an expert in how the oil and gas industry works, but I do know that as a member of the public and as, a former elected official, that we need to look out for our constituents. And so what's driving a lot of these discussions is the nature of the problem that we're trying to avoid. And so we want affordable energy, we want reliable energy. And so that's what's driving these conversations. And I think that we should look at all the solutions. And I think that, you're right. When you have policies that have been in place and then you make exceptions or you reduce royalty, what have you, in order to make things more business friendly, those are things we've always done. And, we've had royalty relief. We have it on the books already. Companies can go in and ask for royalty relief. But if things aren't working the way we need them to work, it's our responsibility to go in and see if there's something that we can do, working together with everyone to find a solution, because we want to avoid importing. And from what I've heard, a lot of people are saying that's looking like what, it's going to happen.
That's going to be the answer. Well, see, this is what's killing me is that people are they're having this, I think Brian earlier called it this unrequited love affair with Alaska gas. Look, we got 17 trillion cubic feet on the North Slope. I would love to burn Alaska gas. I would love to have more in the Cook Inlet. I would love to use our own resources. But there's this whole problem of economics. Can you do it for an equitable amount? Can you do? And if the answer is no, all things being equal, you have to look at your next best option, which might be in the short term, and I'm talking 10-year short term, importing some gas. But it seems like everybody is avoiding that to try and figure out a way to make Alaska gas work. And if we procrastinate long enough, we're going to be in trouble because we have ignored the other viable option and had it as a plan B. We've left it alone. And then we're going to be in, then a real crisis is going to be there.
Well, I do, from what I understand about, the discussions is that it's not one or the other. I think, companies are looking at what their options are, because you can't just avoid this issue. You have to have solutions. And so I think that if importing were to happen, which nobody wants, it will happen because of the economics also. But we do need, in the legislature, we do need to look at some of these options, because we can't continue without any viable options moving forward. And, these contracts, they used to be long-term supply contracts are now hobbling along, at short-term contracts. And so that's not the nature of the industry and not desirable at all. So one of the reasons I'm running is to use my experience working both in the House and Senate to come together on some solutions here.
Right. Okay. We're down to the last couple of minutes here, so I want to give you the final bite at the apple for your elevator pitch for folks who are out there listening. How do they find you? How do they donate time, money, help? How do they vote for you? What, give us the full thing here.
Okay, great. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. I'm running as someone who has experience and a very good track record against an opponent from the Democratic Party, who is somebody that you don't know what you're going to get. And I think that it's important moving forward that we keep our House majority strong and that we have conservative values represented in Juneau. And I would definitely bring that to the table. If you're interested in helping me out, my website is votemia.com, and that's where you can donate. And my cell phone number is 227-5276. I'm happy to take phone calls with questions, or if anyone's interested in volunteering, that would be wonderful. I'm having a fundraiser on Monday night at 5 to 7 at Little Italy with Tom McKay, who's running for the state Senate. And just looking forward to going door to door and meeting people, having a really strong showing. Right now we're behind in the fundraising. So that's pretty much my number one call right now. But thank you again, Michael, for having me on the show.
Well, we appreciate it. I mean, I think it's important. Everybody hates talking about money, but it's the one thing that gets people's attention, because you gotta educate people who are not, who are not political. You got to get that name recognition out there. So hopefully you can get some help with that and get more people involved. Mia Costello, again, votemia.com. House District 15, Monday, that fundraiser over at Little Italy. Thank you, Maria. Hold the line. Folks, we're out of time. Tomorrow's Firearms Friday. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show. All right, Mia, one final bite at the apple here. Anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to touch on that we just didn't get to, or, anything else? But just, I gave you the last couple minutes here to talk about whatever you want to talk about. You're good to go.
Okay, sure. Well, I guess, Michael, what we're seeing in Anchorage is we're seeing a slow erosion of our conservative candidates. We saw the Senate seat flip. We had outside investment at $400,000 in the race to flip the Senate seat, so that now we have Matt Clayman in the Senate. We've got a House member who's running in this district, a House candidate running in this district who is very liberal, He does not represent conservative values, and the Democrats are, pouring money into that seat because he came so close last time to winning within, it was 7 votes. So my candidacy is important in keeping the House majority, and it's important to keep a conservative voice in Juneau so that we don't see policies coming out of Juneau that don't, reflect what we would like, which is, no income tax, no outright income tax. We want to be open for business. We want conservative voices for education. We don't want to just be, funding education without, results, things like that. And so I just think it's really important that, we have a vigorous campaign. And so we're doing everything we can, to get out there and spread that message and get support.
Well, they've been doing it. I mean, you could see it. You saw it in the mayor's race. How many hundreds of thousands of dollars were poured into the mayor race? We see it, in Anchorage with the House races and the thing, and even the governor's race. I mean, there's a lot of money being thrown around in the state of Alaska because they're doing everything in their power to try and turn it blue, or more blue than it already is at this point. Because we know, as goes Anchorage, so goes the rest of the state eventually. And so we definitely need to be pushing towards more conservative candidates in all these areas around there. So if you got a few extra shekels, throw them Mia's way and get them done. Anything else, Mia, before I let you go?
No, just thank you very much. Again, it's votemia.com and my phone number 227-5276, and appreciate all the support.
All right. Well, thank you, Mia Costello. Appreciate you coming on board this morning and joining us. We appreciate that. All right, so we're going to pull her back there, and that does it for us there. Going to drop that there, push this button. Look at that. Boom. All the buttons are pushed, and everything's good. All right, folks. Well, that does it for me today. So much. I got thoughts. Maybe we'll talk about this next week. We're working on Ben Carpenter coming on next Monday. And we'll see who else, maybe even Sarah Montalbano next Monday as well. We'll see what the schedule looks like. Starting to dry up a little bit. I haven't heard back from a lot of these candidates. Like I said, I sent over 116, whatever it was. It was a lot of emails. Still waiting to hear back from some, have heard back from others, but still pretty quiet. And we've got, again, 25 days until the primary. Then it's going to be the general. Should be interesting. Maybe we'll create some head-to-head debates here and see what this is all about, huh? That'd be fun. All right, my friends. Well, I gotta go. We're going to get it done. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. Back with more. Oh, wait. I told a lady that came to my door in South Anchorage, Huffman area about your show. She said she didn't get an email. I told her to contact you. Well, it's funny because most of them had emails, although I got about half a dozen of them bounced back because this is from the State of Alaska website, right? The official candidate website. There was a bunch that didn't have emails on their candidate profiles, which is, you're running for office in 2024. You probably should have an email. And the other ones, the emails got bounced back. You're running for office in 2024. You probably should have a valid email. I'm just saying. Anyway, yeah, tell her to reach out to the show. We'll get her done. All right, out of time. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.